Force yourself to take action. Have you ever noticed how often we wait for the perfect moment before we act? We tell ourselves that we will start when we feel ready, when the timing is better, when the conditions are just right. But the truth is, those moments rarely come. More often, they pass us by while we are still convincing ourselves to take the first step. The Stoics knew this centuries ago. They knew that waiting for motivation is like waiting for the wind to change before you set sail. If you want to move, you must raise the anchor now, even if the sea is uncertain. Action is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. Without it, every plan, every idea, every dream remains trapped in your mind. You can read all the books, listen to all the advice, gather all the inspiration in the world. But if you never step forward, nothing changes. The Stoics believed that action was not something you do only when you feel like it. It is a duty you fulfill because life is short and time is not yours to waste. Imagine standing at the base of a mountain you want to climb. You could spend hours studying the map, checking your equipment, waiting for the clouds to clear. But at some point you must put one foot in front of the other and begin. The climb will not get easier by thinking about it. In fact, the longer you wait, the steeper it feels. Action has a way of shrinking the obstacles we fear. The first step always changes the way the second step looks, and the third and the fourth. Marcus Aurelius once reminded himself, "Do not act as if you have 10,000 years to live, while you have life, while you can be good." For him, goodness was not only moral, it was active. To waste the ability to do what is within your power today was to waste life itself. And in the Stoic mind, every moment lost to hesitation was a moment stolen from the life you could have lived. The challenge, of course, is that action often requires discomfort. It asks you to step out of the warm safety of habit into the cold uncertainty of the unknown. Your mind will resist. It will whisper reasons to wait just a little longer, just until you feel more confident. But confidence does not precede action. It follows it. You grow capable by doing, not by waiting to feel capable. The Stoics trained themselves to act without overthinking, by focusing on what was in their control in the present moment. They asked, "What is the next right thing I can do right now?" Not what is the perfect thing, not what will guarantee success, just the next right thing. And then they did it immediately without waiting for the perfect feeling to arrive. So if you are standing before something you know you should do, stop bargaining with yourself. Stop waiting for the invisible green light. The work will not get lighter. The conditions will not become flawless. But the moment you begin, you take back your power. You prove to yourself that action is not a product of emotion, it is a product of decision. And in that decision lies the key to every change you have ever wanted to make. There is a dangerous myth that most people believe without even realizing it. The myth that you must feel ready in order to act. It is the reason so many dreams die in the waiting room of someday. You tell yourself that the moment will come when the fear has faded, the doubts are gone, and the energy is high. But life does not work that way. Readiness is not an emotional state. It is a decision you make to move despite how you feel. The Stoics were masters of this principle. They acted because action was right, not because they felt inspired. Consider how a soldier in the ancient world prepared for battle. He did not wait until his heart was calm and his body felt light. He stepped onto the field despite fear, trusting that his training and discipline would carry him forward. In the same way, you cannot expect to wait until you are free from hesitation before taking action. The hesitation will not vanish on its own. It is dissolved by movement. Epictetus taught that we are not disturbed by events themselves, but by our opinions about them. This applies to action as well. It is rarely the task itself that is overwhelming. It is our story about it. We imagine how hard it will be, how long it will take, how we might fail. These thoughts inflate the size of the obstacle until it becomes paralyzing. But when you start, you often find it was smaller than you feared. The mind magnifies what the body has not yet begun. This is why the Stoics emphasize the discipline of beginning. Marcus Aurelius wrote that when you wake in the morning, you must rise to your work, like a soldier rises to duty, not with complaint but with resolve. It is not enough to think about what needs to be done. Thinking is a shadow. Action is the substance. Until you cross the threshold from planning to doing nothing, real has changed. Modern psychology backs this up. There is a concept known as behavioral activation, which shows that action can change mood faster than mood can change action. In other words, you do not wait to feel motivated. You act first and the motivation catches up. It is like lighting a fire. You do not wait for the warmth to arrive before you strike the match. You strike the match and the warmth follows. The Stoics also warned against the trap of perfectionism. Many people delay action not out of fear of starting, but out of fear of starting imperfectly. They want the plan to be flawless before they begin. But perfectionism is just procrastination wearing a noble mask. Seneca wrote, "While we are postponing, life speeds by." If you demand perfection before action, you will spend your life preparing for a day that never arrives. One practical Stoic method for breaking this cycle is to focus only on the first small step. If the task feels overwhelming, shrink it until it is impossible not to begin. Do not think about writing an entire book. Think about writing 1 page. Do not think about running 10 miles. Think about putting on your shoes and stepping outside. The momentum of small beginnings is more powerful than waiting for the grand beginning you imagine. There is another truth the Stoics understood well. Action is the cure for doubt. When you sit still, your mind has room to invent endless fears and possibilities. But when you move, the reality of the work pushes those shadows aside. You cannot overthink and fully act at the same time. The mind that is busy with purposeful action has no room for the paralyzing fog of what if. And here is where discipline becomes your ally. If you rely on willpower alone, you will always be at the mercy of your current mood. But discipline is a commitment that outlives mood. It is the decision made in advance that no matter how you feel tomorrow morning, you will do the work. Marcus Aurelius called this living according to reason rather than impulse. Reason sets the course. Impulse only reacts to the weather. Think about the moments in your own life when you hesitated and lost the chance. A conversation you never started, an opportunity you never pursued, a skill you never learned. Each of those moments was a fork in the road between action and inaction. And with each choice, you either strengthen the habit of moving or the habit of waiting. Habits are built quietly, one decision at a time, until they define your life without your noticing. The Stoics would challenge you to choose action not recklessly, but deliberately, as an expression of your values. If something is worth doing, it is worth starting today. You do not need to be fearless. You do not need to be ready. You only need to decide that hesitation will not be the ruler of your life. Every day you wait is a day you will never get back. But every day you act, no matter how small the step is, a day you have claimed as your own. Personal reflection. If you have listened this far, chances are you are tired of waiting for the perfect conditions. I know I was. For years, I thought I needed to feel ready before I could begin. But the truth is, readiness never came until I acted. Take a moment right now. Think of one thing you have been putting off. Do the smallest piece of it today. Send the email. Make the call. Take the first step. Share what you chose in the comments, because your action might spark someone else's. And if this message has given you the push you needed, share it with someone who is still waiting for their green light. Procrastination is not simply laziness. It is a form of fear. Fear that the work will be too hard. Fear that you will not do it well enough. Fear that beginning will expose your lack of skill or certainty. The Stoics understood this long before modern psychology gave it a name. They saw procrastination as a subtle surrender to emotion over reason, a quiet handing over of your will to whatever mood happens to visit you today. and they knew that if you let this habit grow, it becomes a silent ruler over your life. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself in his meditations that life is short and that wasting it on hesitation is a betrayal of the time you have been given. He did not excuse himself with, "I will do it tomorrow." He spoke to himself as a commander might, to a soldier clear, direct, without room for negotiation. If the task is worthy, it must be done now. And if it is not worthy, it should not be on your mind at all. One of the most effective Stoic strategies for breaking procrastination is to remove the emotional weight from the task. Often we build it up in our minds into something massive, something that requires perfect inspiration or complete clarity before we begin. But when you strip it down to its first action, a single phone call, a single sentence, a single push of a button, you rob procrastination of its power. Epictetus would tell his students to focus on the work in front of you, not the whole mountain. The mountain will take care of itself as you climb. Another method is to create structure so that action is automatic. The Stoics were disciplined because they knew the mind cannot be trusted to feel like doing the right thing every day. By fixing certain times for certain actions, writing at dawn, training at midday, reflecting before bed, they freed themselves from the constant inner debate of, should I do this now? The decision was made once and lived daily. This is a truth modern behavioral science confirms. The more you reduce the number of decisions you have to make, the more energy you have for the work itself. Procrastination also thrives on distraction. In the ancient world, distraction came from gossip, politics, and small pleasures. Today, it is multiplied by the infinite reach of technology. A single notification can pull you away from hours of meaningful work. The Stoics would call this a failure to guard your attention, a form of carelessness with your most valuable resource. To fight this, you must create spaces and times where distraction is not allowed in. Turn off what you can, step away from what you cannot, and make your work the only thing in front of you. The Stoics also recommended what we might call negative visualization as a weapon against procrastination. This meant imagining the cost of continued delay. What happens if you never begin? What will your life look like if you keep putting it off for another month, another year? By confronting this image directly, you create a sense of urgency that pulls you out of the comfort of postponement. The pain of inaction, once seen clearly, can outweigh the discomfort of starting. There is another truth worth facing. Procrastination is not neutral. Every day you delay action, you are not simply staying in place, you are losing ground. The world moves. Opportunities expire, your own energy and health shift. Seneca warned that it is not that we have a short time to live, but that we waste much of it. He understood that life does not pause while you wait. The clock is always moving, whether you are moving with it or not. Breaking procrastination is less about willpower and more about creating momentum. The first step is always the hardest, but once you have taken it, the next comes easier. This is why starting small is so powerful. It allows you to collect early victories, which in turn make larger victories possible. It is the difference between trying to push a heavy cart from a standstill and pushing one that is already rolling. And once you begin to act quickly and consistently, you start to build an identity around it. You stop seeing yourself as someone who delays and start seeing yourself as someone who moves. This identity shift is the ultimate weapon against procrastination because it changes your default behavior. The more you live in alignment with that identity, the more automatic action becomes. If you have been battling procrastination for years, it can feel like an unbreakable cycle. But the Stoics would tell you that you break it the same way you break any chain, one link at a time. Begin today with one task, finish it, then another and another. Soon the habit of moving will become as natural as the habit of waiting once was. Personal reflection. If you are still here, you probably know procrastination well. I know I do. It has cost me opportunities, progress, and peace of mind. But I also know that every time I have forced myself to act when I least wanted to, I have never once regretted it. Think about one thing you have been avoiding. Not tomorrow, not next week, today. Take the smallest first step toward it, even if it is just opening the file or picking up the phone. Then tell me in the comments what you did. Your action might be the spark that helps someone else break their own cycle. Motivation is an unreliable ally. It comes and goes like the weather, bright and warm one day, cold and absent the next. If you build your life on motivation, you will work only when the sun is shining in your mind. The Stoics knew this weakness well, which is why they placed their trust not in fleeting feelings, but in willpower and discipline. Willpower is not about forcing yourself through every task with gritted teeth. It is about making the decision to act independent of how you feel in the moment. Discipline is willpower's twin. It is the structure that ensures action happens even when the inner voice says, "Not today." Marcus Aurelius did not wake each morning with boundless enthusiasm. In his private writings, he often reminded himself why he must rise, why he must do his work, why he must resist the temptation to remain in bed. He did not expect to always feel like moving. He expected to move regardless. He trained his mind to obey the command of reason, not the suggestions of mood. This is where many people stumble. They believe they need to feel strong in order to act strong. But the truth is, the reverse action creates strength. Every time you act when you do not want to, you strengthen the muscle of willpower. Just as lifting weights makes the body stronger, lifting yourself into action against resistance makes the mind more powerful. The Stoics had a technique for this called premeditation of difficulty. They would mentally rehearse the day ahead, imagining the tasks they would not feel like doing, the moments when fatigue or boredom would set in. By expecting resistance, they removed the shock of it. When the moment came, they recognized it as something they had already met in their minds, and they acted anyway. Modern psychology echoes this with the concept of implementation. Intention, deciding in advance exactly what you will do in a specific situation. Instead of saying, "I will work out 3 times this week," you decide on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 7 a.m., I will put on my shoes and run for 30 minutes. This clarity removes decision-making in the moment, leaving only the choice to follow through or not. The Stoics would see this as aligning your will with your reasoned plan, making it easier to act when emotions pull in another direction. Willpower is also about managing energy. The Stoics knew that even the strongest resolve can be worn down by constant temptation or distraction. They minimized these drains by creating environments that supported their goals. Epictetus advised avoiding people and situations that would weaken your moral resolve. Today, this might mean keeping your workspace clear of distractions, setting boundaries on your phone, or surrounding yourself with people who live with intention. The less resistance you face from your environment, the more willpower you have for the moments that truly require it. Another cornerstone of Stoic discipline is the acceptance of discomfort. Most people abandon action when it becomes unpleasant, mistaking discomfort for a sign they are on the wrong path. But the Stoics saw discomfort as a necessary companion to growth. By deliberately placing themselves in situations that tested their endurance, cold baths, fasting, physical labor, they trained their will to hold steady under strain. When life brought unchosen hardship, they were already acquainted with the feeling and could keep moving. It is worth noting that willpower is not infinite. The Stoics did not expect themselves to be unbreakable machines. They balanced effort with recovery, knowing that a burned-out mind is as useless as an idle one. This balance is why they valued reflection, solitude, and moments of stillness not as escapes from action, but as refueling stops along the way. When discipline becomes a way of life, action turns into habit, and habit removes the need for constant willpower. Think of brushing your teeth. You do not debate whether to do it each morning, you simply do it because it is who you are. The Stoics aim to make virtuous and productive actions just as automatic. By repeating them daily, they transform them from decisions into reflexes. This is why they measured progress not by bursts of effort, but by consistency over time. Anyone can act with energy for a day or a week. The Stoic seeks to act rightly for a lifetime, and that requires the humility to start again every time you fall short. Seneca wrote, "It is not because things are difficult that we do not dare. It is because we do not dare that they are difficult." Courage for him was not the absence of failure, but the refusal to let failure stop the next attempt. If you are struggling with willpower, now remember this: you do not need to transform overnight. Begin with one commitment and keep it. Let the act of keeping it teach your mind that you can be trusted to follow through. From there, add another. Slowly you will become the kind of person who acts regardless of mood, who moves forward not because the wind is at their back, but because they have decided that standing still is no longer an option. Personal reflection. If you are still here, it is likely because you want to be that kind of person, the one who acts even when every excuse is ready in your mind. I know the temptation to wait to rest just a little longer to push the work to tomorrow, but I also know the satisfaction of proving to yourself that you can move without waiting for the perfect mood. Choose one task you have been avoiding. Do it now, even if you feel tired, distracted, or unprepared. Then notice how you feel afterward. That feeling, the quiet pride of follow-through, is worth more than the comfort you gave up. Share your win in the comments. Someone else may be inspired to win their own battle today. One of the greatest mistakes people make in pursuing their goals is believing that success is the result of one grand action. They imagine a breakthrough moment, a single event that will change everything. But the Stoics understood that real progress is built in small, consistent steps. It is not the single strike of the hammer that shapes the metal, but the steady rhythm of repeated blows. Your life is the same. It is forged not by occasional bursts of effort, but by the quiet persistence of daily action. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Do every act of your life as though it were the last." This was not about rushing or being frantic. It was about treating each action with full attention and care as if it truly mattered, because it does. Every day is a link in the chain of your life. Weak links are easy to break. Strong ones built through daily discipline create a chain that can carry you through storms. The Stoics knew that the mind can become overwhelmed by the size of a distant goal. If you focus only on the mountain peak, you may lose the will to take the next step. Their remedy was to break the goal into the smallest possible unit of action and then commit to that action each day. Epictetus taught his students to focus on what is in your power and ignore the rest. You cannot control whether you reach the peak in a single day, but you can control whether you take the step in front of you today. There is a kind of freedom in this approach. When you stop obsessing over the outcome and start mastering the process, the weight of anxiety lifts. You no longer need to carry the entire journey on your back. You only need to carry the next step. And with each step, you build a track record of reliability with yourself. That trust is the foundation of all achievement. Modern science reinforces this Stoic wisdom. Habits once formed become automatic. They require less mental energy and resist emotional fluctuations. This is why daily rituals are so powerful. If you write for 15 minutes every morning, you will write a book without ever sitting down to write a book. If you invest in your health through small daily choices, you will transform your body without ever launching into a desperate crash effort. The Stoics also practiced reflection as part of their daily structure. At the start of the day, they would plan their actions according to their principles. At the end, they would review what they did well and where they fell short, not to punish themselves, but to learn and adjust. This constant feedback loop allowed them to improve steadily rather than hoping improvement would appear by accident. Seneca warned against drifting through life without clear direction. He compared it to a ship without a harbor, blown aimlessly by the wind, arriving nowhere with purpose. Setting a goal gives you a harbor. Turning that goal into daily actions is how you sail toward it, even if the wind changes. Without this translation from vision to routine, your goal remains a wish. It is important to remember that the Stoic approach to daily action is not about rigid perfection. Life will disrupt your schedule. There will be days when the work is harder, slower, or less inspired. The Stoic answer is not to abandon the plan, but to adapt and return to it as soon as possible. Progress is not destroyed by one missed day. It is destroyed when you let one missed day become a week, then a month. One of the most overlooked benefits of daily action is how it shapes your identity. When you show up for your work every day, you stop being someone who is trying to achieve the goal and start being someone who lives the habits of achievement. Identity changes first in the mind, then in the actions, and finally in the results. This is why the Stoics cared more about living well today than about chasing the rewards of tomorrow, because they knew that if you master today, tomorrow takes care of itself. Think of your own life now. What is the goal you most want to reach? Break it into something you can do today, something so small you cannot reasonably fail. Then do it again tomorrow and the next day, until it becomes part of who you are. This is not the glamorous part of success. It will not always feel exciting, but it is the part that decides whether you ever reach your destination. Personal reflection. If you are still here, you already understand that the daily grind is where dreams either live or die. I used to wait for the big breakthrough the moment everything would change. But I learned that the breakthrough is built by the small moments no one sees. Choose your action for today. Make it clear, make it small, and then do it. Do it again tomorrow. Tell me in the comments what daily habit you are starting and commit to it publicly. That single act of commitment could be the first strong link in the chain that carries you to your goal. Failure is not the end of the road, it is part of the road. The Stoics knew this intimately. They lived in a world where war, illness, and loss were constant companions, and they understood that setbacks were not signs to quit, but signals to adjust. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself, "The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way." This is not a poetic metaphor, it is a mental strategy. It means that every obstacle can become a stepping stone if you choose to see it that way. The problem for most people is that they measure progress in short bursts. They expect the results of a month's effort to look like the results of a year's discipline. When the visible progress does not match their expectations, they lose heart. The Stoics countered this by focusing on the process, not the immediate outcome. They acted according to principle, regardless of whether success seemed near or far. Seneca often wrote that fortune is fickle. You may do everything right and still face failure. But for the Stoic, the true victory is in living according to your values, not in securing a guaranteed outcome. This mindset turns every day into a win because you can control your effort and your choices, even when you cannot control the results. In practice, this means reframing failure. Instead of seeing it as a verdict, see it as feedback. What went wrong? What can be improved? Where did you overestimate your readiness? And where did you underestimate your ability to adapt? By treating failure as a teacher, you avoid the trap of emotional paralysis and turn every loss into training for the next attempt. One of the most powerful tools the Stoics used in the face of setbacks was perspective. Marcus Aurelius often wrote about viewing life from above as if he were looking down at the earth from a great height. From this vantage point, the events that feel enormous in the moment shrink to their true size. A failed project is not the end of your life. It is a single page in a much larger book. This perspective frees you from the grip of despair and reminds you that there is more road ahead. The Stoics also practice gratitude in the midst of difficulty. It sounds counterintuitive, but when you train yourself to notice what is still within your control, what is still working, and what you have already overcome, you strengthen your resolve. Gratitude shifts your focus from what is broken to what can be built upon. It keeps you moving forward instead of staring only at what has fallen apart. Consistency after failure is not about blind stubbornness, it is about intelligent persistence. The Stoics adapted their strategies without abandoning their principles. If a certain path was blocked, they looked for another route, but they never let the blockage convince them that the journey itself was impossible. This is why they saw obstacles as fuel. Each one forced them to grow in skill, patience, and resilience. Modern psychology supports this with the concept of a growth mindset. People who believe that abilities can be developed through effort and learning are more likely to persist after setbacks. This is exactly what the Stoics practiced. They assumed that every challenge was an opportunity to become stronger. The harder the problem, the more valuable the lesson. If you are facing slow progress right now, remember, this speed is irrelevant if you are moving in the right direction. The Stoics would rather take small, steady steps toward their goal than sprint in the wrong direction and collapse. Progress is not always obvious day to day, but over months and years it compounds into transformation. Trust the compound effect of consistent action. One mental exercise that can help is to imagine yourself a year from now. If you quit today, what will you have gained? Nothing but the comfort of stopping. But if you continue even at a slow pace, what could be different? The Stoics would urge you to choose the path that expands your capacity, even if it challenges your patience. Personal reflection. If you are still here, you have probably faced your share of setbacks. I have too. Some days the temptation to stop is strong, but every time I chose to keep going, I discovered that the hardest days often come right before the breakthrough. Think about one area in your life where progress feels slow. Commit to giving it another week, another month of steady effort before you even consider quitting. Share your commitment in the comments. You may find that declaring it out loud strengthens your resolve. Laziness is often misunderstood. It is not always the absence of energy. More often, it is the habit of letting comfort decide your actions. You feel the pull of the couch, the ease of doing nothing, the temporary relief of postponing what matters. The Stoics saw this for what it was, a surrender of your will to the soft chains of inaction. Marcus Aurelius reminded himself in his meditations that he was made for work as the horse is made to run the bee, to gather honey. To resist action was to resist his own nature. The Stoics approached laziness not with shame but with strategy. They understood that waiting until you feel like acting is a trap. Feelings are fickle. They will rarely align perfectly with what you need to do. Instead, they practiced what can be called the immediate action principle. The moment a worthwhile task comes to mind, begin it. Not after you check your phone, not after you feel more ready. Now. This bypasses the negotiation phase where excuses multiply. Epictetus taught that the delay between intention and action is where most people lose their lives. In that space, hesitation creeps in. You think of reasons to wait, and those reasons become heavier with each passing moment. The Stoic method is to close that gap until it disappears. You think you act almost as one motion. Over time, this becomes instinct. One way to train this instinct is through small, low-stakes actions. When you see something out of place, put it back immediately. When a message arrives, respond, if it takes less than 2 minutes. When you think of a person you should call, dial the number before you can talk yourself out of it. These small victories teach your mind that action is the default, not the exception. The Stoics also warned about the seductive power of comfort. Seneca observed that a life spent avoiding discomfort is a life unprepared for reality. Comfort is not evil in itself, but when it becomes your master, it robs you of the strength to act when action is hard. The antidote is deliberate exposure to mild discomfort, rising earlier than you want, taking a cold shower, tackling the most unpleasant task first. By training yourself to step willingly into small hardships, you make yourself immune to the paralysis of laziness. Another Stoic tactic is to focus on purpose rather than mood. Ask yourself, what is the reason I must do this, rather than do I feel like doing this? Purpose creates a sense of duty, and duty can carry you when mood cannot. Marcus Aurelius did not rise early because he enjoyed leaving the warmth of his bed. He rose because he had work to do for the good of others. When your reason is strong enough, the resistance of laziness shrinks. Modern science calls this the 5-second rule, popularized by Mel Robbins. When you have an instinct to act on a goal, count backward from 5 and move before your brain can stop you. The Stoics did not count aloud, but they lived by the same principle. The decision and the action must be as close as possible. It is also worth noting that laziness can be a symptom of unclear priorities. If you do not know what matters most, it is easy to drift toward whatever is easiest. The Stoics solved this by defining their values and aligning their actions with them. Once you know what you stand for, you can measure each choice against it. Does this action serve my purpose? If yes, begin. If no, discard it without guilt. Over time, practicing immediate action rewires your relationship with work. You stop seeing it as a burden to be avoided and start seeing it as the natural expression of who you are. The satisfaction of acting quickly replaces the fleeting pleasure of avoiding effort. You become someone who moves when it is time to move without hesitation. Personal reflection. If you are still here, it is probably because you know what it feels like to lose hours or days to hesitation. I have been there too, but I also know how powerful it feels to act before the excuses arrive. Choose one thing you have been delaying. Give yourself 5 seconds and start. Not later, now. Then share what you did in the comments. You may find that the simple act of beginning is the hardest and most important part. Focus is the currency of achievement. Without it, even the most talented mind is like a lantern in the wind, its light scattered, unable to guide the way. The Stoics understood this long before our world became noisy with constant notifications and endless distractions. They knew that a wandering mind is a powerless mind, and that the ability to hold your attention on what matters is the foundation of all meaningful action. Marcus Aurelius wrote often about the importance of doing one thing at a time and doing it well. He warned himself not to be pulled in every direction by unimportant matters, because each distraction is a thief of time, and time once lost can never be reclaimed. In our modern age, the thieves have multiplied. The phone in your pocket, the alerts on your screen, the voices of 1,000 opinions all compete for the limited space of your attention. The Stoics approached focus as both a discipline and a moral duty. Discipline because it required practice to resist the lure of distraction. Moral duty because they saw every moment of wasted attention as a failure to live in accordance with reason. Seneca wrote that to be everywhere is to be nowhere, meaning that dividing your attention too thinly leaves you fully present in nothing. To maintain focus, the Stoics simplified their environment. They removed unnecessary noise and created clear boundaries between work and leisure. Epictetus advised avoiding conversations and situations that did not serve your purpose. This was not about isolation, it was about guarding the gates of the mind, letting in only what strengthened rather than weakened it. One powerful Stoic technique for focus is intentional presence. When you sit to do a task, you decide in advance that your mind will not wander to the past or the future. You train yourself to live entirely in the present action. If thoughts drift, you notice them and return again and again, like a soldier returning to his post. Over time, this practice sharpens your ability to stay engaged with what is in front of you. Modern research supports this ancient wisdom. Studies on deep work show that uninterrupted blocks of focus produce results that scattered attention cannot match. Every time you switch tasks, your brain loses momentum. The Stoics would say that you are leaking energy with every shift, and that protecting a single thread of attention is far more efficient than weaving a dozen frayed ones. Another Stoic strategy is to connect focus to purpose. When you know why a task matters, you are less tempted to abandon it for something trivial. Marcus Aurelius rose each day with the reminder that he was born to serve, to fulfill his role as emperor and as a human being. This sense of duty anchored his mind in the work, even when distractions whispered. You can do the same by reminding yourself of the deeper reason behind your current task. To strengthen focus, the Stoics also embraced periods of solitude. They stepped away from the crowd to think, to write, to plan. In solitude, the noise fades and the mind regains clarity. This is not about rejecting society, but about giving yourself enough quiet to remember what truly matters. Even a few minutes of stillness each day can reset your mental state and restore your capacity to act with intention. Finally, the Stoics practiced what we might call closing the loops. Unfinished tasks pull at your attention, scattering your energy across too many open threads. By finishing what you start or deliberately choosing to set it aside, you free your mind from the constant background hum of the undone. Each completed action strengthens the habit of finishing, and finishing is the twin of focusing. Personal reflection. If you are still here, it is because you value your attention. You know it is worth more than any currency. I have seen my own focus eroded by the constant pull of distractions, but I have also felt the quiet power that comes from shutting out the noise and locking in on one thing. Choose one block of time today, just 30 minutes, where you will do nothing but the task in front of you. No phone, no email, no split attention. Then share in the comments what you accomplished. You might be surprised at how much more you can do when you give yourself the gift of undivided focus. Patience is not simply waiting, it is the art of enduring with purpose. The Stoics knew that real change takes time and that rushing the process often destroys the very progress you are trying to make. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "No great thing is created suddenly." He understood that nature itself works in seasons. Trees do not bear fruit the day after they are planted. Rivers carve valleys only after years of persistence. In the same way, your efforts will often bloom only after long periods of steady cultivation. The challenge is that in our modern world, speed is glorified. We are surrounded by stories of overnight success, instant transformation, and quick results. This makes it harder to value the slow, patient work that the Stoics embraced. Seneca warned against this hunger for immediacy, reminding his readers that anything worth having is worth the time it takes to build. Impatience, he argued, is often a mask for insecurity, the fear that if results take too long, they will never come. For the Stoics, patience was active, not passive. It did not mean standing still and hoping for things to happen. It meant continuing to act consistently, even when visible progress was small. They believed that you should measure yourself not by how quickly you reach the goal, but by how faithfully you follow the process. This mindset shields you from the frustration that comes when results lag behind effort. One practical Stoic technique for combining action with patience is to set process goals rather than outcome goals. Instead of saying, "I will lose 20 pounds in 3 months, you decide, "I will exercise 4 times a week," and you eat with discipline every day. You cannot directly control the speed of your weight loss, but you can control the actions that produce it. Marcus Aurelius would call this focusing on what is up to you, leaving the rest to unfold in its own time. Another key is to reframe the passage of time. Impatience often comes from the belief that the present moment is wasted if it is not delivering results. The Stoics rejected this idea. They saw each moment of effort as valuable in itself because it aligned with their values. If your actions are good, then each day you act is already a success, regardless of the outcome. This transforms patience from a chore into a form of peace. Modern psychology offers a similar perspective through the concept of delayed gratification. Studies show that people who can resist the lure of immediate rewards in favor of larger, long-term gains tend to be more successful in many areas of life. The Stoics practiced this naturally. They trained themselves to find satisfaction in the discipline itself rather than needing constant rewards to stay motivated. Patience also requires resilience in the face of setbacks. When results are slow, obstacles can feel heavier. The Stoics turned these moments into tests of character. Marcus Aurelius wrote that you should meet each obstacle by asking, "What can I do with this?" rather than "Why is this happening to me?" This keeps your mind in a state of engagement rather than helplessness. The combination of action and patience is like planting and tending a garden. You do the work, planting, watering, weeding day after day without demanding that the seeds sprout on your schedule. You trust that nature, given care and time, will do its work. The Stoics believed the same about human effort. You plant your actions into the soil of time and allow them to grow at their own pace. When impatience strikes, one helpful exercise is to zoom out. Look at your life in 5-year or 10-year spans. Ask yourself if the work you are doing now will matter then. If it will, then the slow pace is irrelevant. You are building something for the long term, and the long term is where the deepest rewards live. Personal reflection. If you are still here, you likely know the discomfort of waiting for results that never seem to arrive. I have felt it too, the temptation to abandon the slow path in search of something faster. But every time I stayed the course, I found that the results eventually came often in ways I did not expect. Think about one area where you have been impatient. Commit to another month of steady action before you judge the outcome. Share that commitment in the comments. Someone reading may decide to stay on their path because you did. Self-evaluation is the compass that keeps action aligned with purpose. Without it, you can work tirelessly and still drift far from where you intended to go. The Stoics understood this deeply. They did not see self-reflection as a luxury, but as a discipline just as important as the work itself. Marcus Aurelius wrote in his Meditations as a way to examine his own thoughts and actions daily, measuring them against the values he had chosen to live by. This practice served two purposes: to reinforce what was working and to correct what was not. The Stoics knew that even the most disciplined mind is prone to error. By reviewing their choices, they could catch themselves in small deviations before those deviations became habits. Seneca advised ending each day by asking, "What bad habit have you resisted today? In what way have you improved?" This daily review created a cycle of constant improvement. The Stoics approached self-evaluation without self-punishment. They were not interested in tearing themselves down, but in building themselves up through honest assessment. When they found faults, they treated them as problems to be solved, not as reasons to despair. This is an important distinction. Self-reflection without compassion leads to paralysis, not progress. One method they used was to compare their actions to their principles rather than to the results. Results can be influenced by chance, but actions are always within your control. If the action was in line with your values, it was considered a success even if the outcome was imperfect. This kept their sense of progress tied to what they could influence rather than to the shifting winds of fortune. Modern science confirms that self-monitoring increases performance. When you track your actions, whether in fitness work or personal growth, you become more aware of patterns that either help or hinder you. The Stoics did this mentally and in writing, making it harder for bad habits to hide in the background. The key to effective self-evaluation is clarity. You must know what you are aiming for before you can measure your aim. The Stoics began with clear definitions of their virtues: wisdom, courage, justice, and temperance. Every decision could be weighed against these. If an action strengthened these virtues, it was good. If it weakened them, it needed to change. Another important Stoic habit was to adjust course quickly. They did not cling stubbornly to a failing approach just because they had invested effort in it. If reflection showed that a method was ineffective, they let it go and tried something new. This flexibility kept them from wasting time on prideful persistence. As Epictetus reminded his students, it is not things that disturb us, but our judgments about them. If the judgment proved wrong, it was to be replaced without hesitation. Self-evaluation also served as a safeguard against self-deception. Without regular review, it is easy to tell yourself that you are doing the right thing simply because you are busy. But busyness is not the same as progress. The Stoics would strip away excuses and ask, am I truly moving toward my purpose, or am I distracting myself with motion that feels productive but leads nowhere? An effective way to bring this into modern life is to set aside a few minutes each evening for a personal debrief. Ask yourself, what did I set out to do today? What did I actually do? Where did I fall short and why? What will I do differently tomorrow? Over time, these small adjustments add up to massive shifts in effectiveness. The Stoics understood that the goal was not perfection, but direction. As long as you are honest about where you stand and willing to correct your course, you will not stray far from your chosen path. This constant recalibration is what allows long-term goals to be achieved without losing your way in the daily grind. Personal reflection. If you are still here, you already understand that doing the work is only half the battle. Knowing whether it is the right work is the other half. I have seen how easy it is to drift, to believe that effort alone guarantees progress, but it is only when I have stopped to reflect, to ask myself the hard questions, that I have found the small changes that made the biggest difference. Take 10 minutes tonight to review your day. Be honest, but also be kind. Share in the comments one thing you will do differently tomorrow, and let it be your next step toward mastery. Pressure has a way of revealing who we truly are. When everything is calm, it is easy to appear disciplined, wise, and composed. But when life tightens its grip, when deadlines loom, when conflict erupts, when uncertainty clouds the future, our inner foundation is tested. The Stoics prepared for this test every day because they knew that life would not spare them from hardship. Marcus Aurelius ruled during wars, plagues, and political unrest, yet his writings reflect a mind that sought calm in the middle of chaos. For the Stoics, the first key to maintaining strength under pressure was to separate what is within their control from what is not. Epictetus taught that external events are beyond our command, but our thoughts, choices, and actions belong entirely to us. In high-pressure situations, this perspective acts like a shield. It prevents the mind from wasting energy on things it cannot change, focusing instead on the moves that are possible. The second key was emotional regulation. The Stoics did not seek to erase emotions, but to master them. Fear, anger, and anxiety may rise naturally under stress, but the Stoic trains himself not to be ruled by them. Seneca advised pausing before reacting, allowing reason to step in where impulse once dominated. This pause creates space to choose a response that serves your purpose rather than one that serves your panic. A third Stoic strategy was premeditatio malorum, anticipating potential challenges before they occur. By mentally rehearsing possible difficulties, they reduced the shock of encountering them in real life. If you have already considered the worst that could happen and prepared your mind for it, you meet the moment with readiness instead of fear. This preparation does not make the pressure disappear, but it makes you stronger under its weight. The Stoics also valued the role of perspective in easing pressure. Marcus Aurelius often reminded himself to look at life from a higher vantage point. From above, many problems shrink in significance. A crisis at work that feels overwhelming today may be forgotten in a year. Remembering this helps to loosen the grip of urgency and allows you to act more deliberately. Resilience under pressure also comes from maintaining inner routines. The Stoics believed that in times of chaos, structure becomes even more important. A morning ritual of reflection, a few minutes of deep breathing, a consistent time for physical exercise. These anchors give the mind stability no matter what storms are raging outside. By keeping even small commitments to yourself during high-pressure times, you prove to yourself that you are still in control. Modern psychology echoes these ancient practices. Research on stress management shows that focusing on controllable actions, practicing mindfulness, and maintaining consistent habits can dramatically reduce the negative effects of pressure. These are not just coping strategies, they are performance strategies. They allow you to think clearly, make better decisions, and endure longer. The Stoics also understood that strength under pressure is not a solitary achievement. They surrounded themselves with people who shared their values and could offer counsel without feeding fear or panic. In difficult times, a calm voice from someone you trust can serve as a reminder of what truly matters. For the Stoics, friendship was not just companionship, it was a source of mutual reinforcement in the pursuit of virtue. Ultimately, the Stoic aim in high-pressure situations was not merely to survive, but to act with integrity despite the strain. They measured success not by the removal of difficulty, but by their ability to remain true to themselves within it. Pressure was not an enemy. It was the proving ground for their philosophy. Personal reflection. If you are still here, it is likely because you have faced moments when the weight of life felt almost too heavy to bear. I have been there too. What I have learned is that pressure does not have to break you, it can shape you. The next time you feel the tension rising, take a breath. Identify what is within your control and act on that. Let go of the rest. Share in the comments one challenge you are facing now and how you will approach it differently with this mindset. You may inspire someone else who is fighting their own battle. Every journey, no matter how long or how difficult, comes down to a single truth: you are the one who must walk it. The Stoics never promised that the road to mastery would be easy. They promised only that it would be worth it. From the first moment you choose to act rather than wait, you step into a life shaped by intention rather than drift. That single step, repeated over and over, becomes the bridge from who you are to who you are capable of becoming. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, and Seneca lived in different times, faced different trials, and held different positions in life. Yet they all agreed on one unshakable point: the quality of your life is determined not by what happens to you, but by how you choose to respond. You may not control the events, but you always control your attitude, your effort, and your integrity. This is the core of Stoic action. It is not about waiting for the perfect moment, but about making the present moment count. Through these 12 lessons, we have seen how the Stoics approached action not as bursts of effort, but as a way of life. They replaced dependence on fleeting motivation with steady willpower. They broke grand ambitions into daily, manageable steps. They faced failure without losing direction, confronted laziness with immediate action, guarded their focus, and paired relentless work with patient endurance. They reflected, adjusted, and grew stronger in the face of pressure. And now the final challenge is to put these ideas into practice, not someday, not when you feel ready, but now. The truth is, philosophy that stays on the page is as useless as a sword that stays in its sheath. It is only in the act of living that these principles become real. The Stoics understood this deeply, which is why they lived their philosophy in every decision, every conversation, every response to hardship. You have the same opportunity. The question is whether you will take it. There will be days when you do not feel like it, days when progress seems invisible, days when every step feels heavier than the last. But those are the days that define you. Anyone can act when the path is clear and the sun is shining. What will set you apart is your ability to move forward in the dark, guided by the compass of your values. If you have been waiting for a sign to start, this is it. If you have been waiting for certainty, you will wait forever. The Stoics would remind you that the only certainty you need is that the moment you are in is your only guaranteed moment. Do not let it pass unused. In the end, action is not just about achievement, it is about becoming. Every time you choose to do what matters, instead of what is easy, you are shaping the person you will be tomorrow. And one day you will look back and realize that the life you are living is the result of thousands of small victories over hesitation, fear, and comfort. So take the step, do the work, live the philosophy, and let your life be the proof that the Stoic path is not only possible, it is powerful. Personal reflection. If you are still here, it means you are serious about changing the way you live. I have walked this path long enough to know that the hardest part is beginning, and the second hardest is beginning again when you fall off track. But every return to action is a victory. I challenge you to choose one principle from these 12 parts and live it fully for the next 7 days. Then share your experience in the comments. You never know who might need to hear your story to find the courage to start their own.
If this message stirred something in you, don't let it fade. Write one thing down that you'll start doing this week. 2025 doesn't magically change anything you do, and your future begins the moment you decide to move, even just a little.